This is a podcast about new crops. You're going to love it. Join us on The Cutting Edge, a podcast in search of new crops for Wisconsin.
Hey everybody, this is a continuation of our discussion about hemp from the previous episode, with Dr. Shelby Ellison staying on the line to give us an update on the very exciting agronomic research she's conducting with her lab here at UW-Madison. Dr. Ellison is an assistant professor in the Department of Plant and Agroecosystem Sciences at UW with a focus on the genetics of alternative crops. We're just going to dive right into the conversation with Shelby. Hope you enjoy.
I think we're at a really interesting place because we have been studying this for about 5 years now. So we kind of are starting to get to a place where we know what we're doing and what we're looking for. So one exciting thing is we've been part of this Midwestern Hemp Research Collaborative since 2022. And the purpose of that group essentially was, so for this, we're really focusing on the three different parts of hemp now. So we have grain and fiber that we treat as our industrial side, and then we have high cannabinoid hemp, which is grown for CBD production. And so we really wanted to grow most of the available seed that you can find on the market right now, all the different available varieties, and grow them in Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Wisconsin. We work with farmers. They grow them on their fields. We work at our university sites, and we collect data on, performance, how well they yield, as well as the cannabinoid content. And we have finished this 3-year study where we've grown this across this region, more than 20 different sites. We also work with Michael Fields Ag Institute. And we now have a very, very good database called the Midwestern Hemp Database, where growers can go and find pretty much every available cultivar and see the yield across all the locations and also the cannabinoid content. So the worry of like, is it going to go above this 0.3% THC? We test them 3 weeks after flowering, 5 weeks, and 7 weeks, and we see if it crosses that threshold. This is important because farmers need to test their plants so they know when they might need to test their plants. But we feel like we've made a really nice resource for growers to figure out where to start when they're going to pick their cultivars. And then similarly, we have been doing that to kind of help with the new farm bill and to provide information to lawmakers about what exists. Like, this is really what maybe the thresholds should be. We have 90% of cultivars that are compliant maybe at 5 weeks after flowering, and then that reduces to 20% after 7 weeks. And so I think it's like a really nice body of data that we've been collecting that there's thousands and thousands of samples in there that we have grown and tested that can help inform new legislation when we're talking about kind of what differentiates grain and fiber from high CBD, as well as information for farmers. So we're also doing things looking at planting times and nitrogen rates and row spacings and this stuff. So just really figuring out like how do you grow hemp in Wisconsin and in the region, and what performs well. So I feel good about that, just that there's that foundational information that's available now. And then kind of in new areas, one thing that is something the lab really picked up steam on this year is so hemp grown for grain for feed is a very interesting topic. A lot of farmers that are interested in growing for grain, whether that's for food products where you can have hulled hemp seeds that go into either protein oil or just as hulled hemp hearts that you can buy. A lot of folks are interested in that, and there's a big market, especially in the kind of the natural food world, and hemp is kind of a superfood. Got a really nice omega-3, omega-6 fatty acid profile. Um, the there is not really a secondary feed market or an off-type market for grain to go into because it's not currently legal to feed hemp grain to animals in the United States. And part of that is because there might be residual THC or CBD on those seeds. So the FDA wants to figure out how many cannabinoids are transferred to the food product. So you need to do feed trials where you feed a cow and test the milk and test um, the meat and see what is actually being transferred to the animals, as well as like what is the period of extinction where you feed it and it goes out. So those are very expensive and difficult trials to do. But we're finally getting to a point where we're getting approvals. So last year, spent hemp grain can now be fed as a chicken meal. Hemp component, I don't know at what percent it's allowable, but those are underway for dairy, for beef cattle, for lamb. So all of those studies are kind of paving the way to be able to feed the secondary grain market to animals. So one thing that we're very interested in, we've been collaborating with some of the folks in dairy science around the state and other large dairy farms to try to initiate some of these feeding trials, which is really exciting. But on the plant side, hemp is like other grain crops, like wheat, where you can get something called fusarium head blight. And this is a problem because fusarium head blight can cause what are called mycotoxins. And these can make the animals sick, they can make humans sick. So we are really trying to start breeding for fusarium resistance in our hemp crop and also add this to like the database. What varieties seem to have pretty good resistance? Which ones do seem to accumulate a lot of fusarium and therefore also mycotoxins? So starting to get a handle on that. And that's important both for grain, for feeding, and also for flowers. If people are growing cannabis for flowers and smoking that or extracting cannabinoids and there's mycotoxins in that, that's a major health um, concern. And there's no one testing for that right now because there is no regulation around products that are being derived in the state that you can find. So this is a new big shift in the lab is this emphasis on fusarium head blight and downstream both human and animal harm reduction from mycotoxin accumulation.
What kind of industry partners are you working with to kind of address that mycotoxin issue?
Yeah, so we've talked to a couple of different dairy and cattle large companies. I probably won't say their names right now that have offered for us to potentially do some feed trials with them. So that's interesting. And we're applying for funding through the Dairy Innovation Hub to kind of look at hemp as a feed ingredient. I've been working with Laura Hernandez here in animal science to look at doing, because we have our own dairy herd that we can do research with here. But there are definitely industry partners that have showed interest in doing this, and they're also interested. They're growing hemp, and they want to see if they can use it as a feed supplement. Um, but then we also work with Rock River to do the mycotoxin testing. So they are already doing that in lots of other grain crops. So they have the ability to run those analyses for us. Um, and of course, like working with groups like AFCO or FDA that are the certifying bodies for whether or not these products can be allowable in hemp feed for different types of animals. And then there's large groups. There's a national hemp groups that are comprised of large groups of farmers that are interested in this as well.
Do you have any sense of how far away we are from approval for other livestock?
Yeah. I don't think I can confidently say that. But I know, they need to have years long replicated studies, and some of these were initiated in 2021, 2022. So I would not be surprised if there are a couple of feed approvals that are within the next few years that come through. Um, but they are very expensive because while you run them, you essentially cannot utilize like to use our dairy herd. You have to throw away all the milk. You have to keep feeding those animals. It's a huge loss and nobody has money right now. So it's challenging to do those studies for sure.
You noticed in the last year or can speak to any sort of significant changes? I mean, we always have changes with new administrations and what their priorities are. Have you noticed any changes in this last year at that level with support of your hemp research?
Um, I mean, all I can say is from academic colleagues I know several folks have kind of had to give up doing research in hemp. Um, there's not as much funding as there was, but there's also just not as much funding in general. So, if you are an advocate for whatever stakeholder group you represent or what you only have so much time and resources that is something that I've seen happen, which is, really sad because I feel like the hemp industry is slowly growing now, and there are actually processors coming online in different places. And there, if you look at the trend of hemp production and especially how much money the industry is worth, like it is definitely trending upwards the last like 3 years. Every year over each year, it's growing at like a 20% rate. It is growing right now. It's going in the right direction. So I don't want people to like lose steam now. um, but then my struggles with finding funding, that is the same as I think any person at the university right now. There are no grants available. The USDA NEFA website is shut down. There's just because a lot of the programs, we don't know if they're going to exist. We're just waiting. So I don't know if it is specific to hemp, but we are certainly feeling like we have fewer resources to do research overall. But I'm just waiting to see what programs will exist. So I can't really talk about if I feel like hemp is still supported or not. And definitely the new farm bill we are waiting to see what is going to be presented in that. And I hope, the goal is to also have a seat at the table to kind of, for a group of us that have been working very hard on this for the last 5 years, to be able to show what we've found so far.
You
Yeah.
mentioned in our discussion with Rob that you can sometimes detect feral hemp when you're just driving around.
Uh-huh.
Um, how did that happen? Is there a story behind that?
No, just well, it's very interesting working in hemp and having a small child. So I think it was actually um maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I was driving to like some pumpkin patch right around this time of year. So I'm sure it was like late September, early October, when the plants are the most fragrant. And I was just driving out somewhere like in the Driftless region, and it was a lovely day, and we're just gonna go do all the agro-tourism stuff you do at pumpkin patches. And I opened my window and I was like, I swear I can smell cannabis. And like lo and behold, the road in front of us was just lined with ditchweed, and I smelled it before I saw it. And then my poor child has to wait as I record the geo coordinates because I'm gonna go collect seed from them the next week. So yeah, it's been an interesting couple of years. My son can very, very definitively ex point out male versus female hemp plants and the anatomical features of them.
Stories children have when their parents are scientists.
Mhm.
So the feral hemp, I've been involved a little bit on that in the project of collecting feral hemp and your selections. Do you have an update on that project?
Yeah, that project is not done, but I will say the initial grant, so the whole purpose was that you're starting a new program, there's no seed. If you want a breeding program, you need seed. So where do you get it from? And the US DA germplasm repository where you would normally order seed, there was not a collection in hemp. It was destroyed in 1970, so we had to rebuild it. So being from the Midwest, I knew that there was all of this ditchweed around Wisconsin, and I've heard through the grapevine that it's all throughout the Midwest. So the grant was to collect seed from those populations that escaped from production in the 1940s. And the last 4 years, we've been collecting and growing a big network of collectors. Part of the grant was to pay um, people who would report populations to help us collect them and make sure that they were compensated for their efforts. And we collected 1,200 hemp plants from 14 different states across the Midwest. And all of that material, the seeds from each of those plants, was donated to the USDA Hemp Germplasm Repository. So it is now maintained in Geneva, New York. They are there and they'll be available for redistribution. We also tested them for their cannabinoid content, so we know whether they're truly hemp or drug type cannabis. And over 80% of the plants were true hemp. Some of them are had a mix between drug type and hemp, which means that you need to self them and you can get seeds out of them that will be compliant. So that's something that we're working on now, is kind of what we're calling cleaning it up, or just making it compliant for hemp farmers. That material is mostly used to breed new varieties. So that can be given then to researchers or breeders who want to use that germplasm or those seeds to make new hemp cultivars. And now the cool thing we're doing is we're evaluating that material in fields to see, does it have interesting resistance to the climate, because it's been adapting there for 70 years just in the wild. So maybe, we're seeing some of those lines don't seem to get fusarium head blight as much as other cultivars, or they don't have the same, they can do better in cold falls, like they're more resilient in the climate that they're growing in. There's a flip side to that. They also shatter their seeds because they're turned wild. So that's like, we have to use those and breed them with materials that, have other traits that are advantageous to make new cultivars. But I'm really proud of that project. It was a huge success. People call me from all over now and report new populations. So it would be great if we can keep that project funded so we can continue to increase the seed bank. The next step really is also, I have hundreds of seeds from each of these plants. We need to maintain them and better characterize them. So I think that's kind of the new direction that we're going in now, is how can we use them and what are they all good for?
So when can we expect the first Wisconsin adapted variety to be released from UW-Madison?
Let's say 5 years. I've been working on it for about 3 years. So we'll say five years we'll release something. And that is a partnership right now we have with LCO, or Lukudoroyo Ojibwa University. We are working on developing a fiber cultivar that we're coining it right now, Wilco. It's WILCO. But that, yeah, give me another 5 years.
Awesome.
Cool. Excited about that. All right. Is there anything else you want to share about your research right now, Shelby?
I think that that's good, but I do encourage people to check out the Midwestern Hemp database too. There's both the fiber and grain database as well as the cannabinoid database. Philip Alberti, the project manager in my lab, has put his heart and soul into developing those, and I think they're really great resources for the Midwest. So if you're interested in growing hemp, that also links to where the seeds were provided, so you can find something you want. It links to where you can get the seed. We also are always looking for farmer collaborators to help us with our trials. So please reach out to me, Shelby Ellison. You can look up our lab at UW or check things out on the Midwestern Hemp database.
Thanks to Shelby and her team for all their work, as well as my co-host and extension colleague, Ann Cowenstrott. And thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Cutting Edge. We'll see you next time.
Brought to you by the University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension.